Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on how to connect with your audience. And I've just noticed a typo in my first slide. How to connect, and the other word that goes with connection is build rapport. How to connect and build rapport with your audience. My name's Peter Dew, and I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and I provide services Australia-wide to help people become more effective, more confident, and share their message, their passion to those audiences that need to hear what you have got to say. A little bit of housekeeping. You've got my website, my email, LinkedIn profile. You know how to reach me. By all means, after the webinar, I'd welcome any further comments, any further questions, and welcome Charlotte. We're just getting underway at the moment as we speak. Couple of new people on the webinar, so I haven't seen you participate in webinars before, so let me give you just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, please ask questions as we go. You have a dialogue box that you can open up and you can type in anytime questions and comments, not just questions. Maybe you've had an experience you'd like to share with other people on the webinar. Please take notes. And I think the most important thing is to apply the knowledge I'm sharing with you, and how might you have used this in a previous presentation. Think of a presentation in the past that maybe you didn't have the connection and the rapport with your audience. Is there anything that I've shared with you today that you could have done differently in that previous workshop? Or we can move forward. You've got a presentation coming up. Is there anything you can do or anything you're going to change to make that presentation different so you enjoy a stronger connection, a stronger rapport with the people in your room? All right, let's get started. How to build connection, how to build rapport with the people in the room. The first thing is why? Why do we build rapport with the audience? And it's about generating that connection. It's about letting people know that you're there for them. It helps you to generate trust. Do you know people buy from people they know, like, and trust? And I've changed that quote a little bit. People will listen and learn from people they know, like, and trust. If you go straight into lessons, this is the 4-step process. This is the way you need to do it, and you haven't taken the time to generate that trust, people may not buy your message. Rapport helps you build that credibility, helps you be seen as reliable, and it also gives you that permission to sell. As I say, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And when you're putting forward a new way of thinking, maybe a different way of doing things, a change management perspective, you're actually selling. You're selling information. You're selling new ideas. You're selling disruption. You're selling innovation. You need to gain permission to sell. You need to gain permission. So that's why we build rapport. Rapport to connect, to generate trust. It helps us build that credibility. We're seen as reliable, someone to go to, someone we can get that information from, and to gain permission to teach and sell. So how do we build rapport? How do we build trust? First of all, know what you're talking about. Don't make up information here. Really important that you've got a good understanding of your knowledge. Do what you do. Do what you say. This is walk the talk. Don't be a time management guru who starts 5 minutes late. Don't be a financial planner who talks about not investing in assets that don't earn you an income and who drives expensive Mercedes-Benz and BMWs. Do outline your credentials, some experience. What is your track record? What qualifications do you have? Have you authored any books? Do you write blog posts? Share some vulnerability. Those of you who know me know that I'm a person who stutters. You know that I've struggled with my journey to public speaking. So feel free to reveal some vulnerability. I've got this wonderful book from Brené Brown, Daring Greatly. Have the courage, how the courage to be vulnerable can help you in your leadership, in your life, in the way you love, the way you parent. The courage to be vulnerable. Brené Brown, you should watch her TED Talk. Share your struggle, share your successes. You know, a lot of people are here and they want to get here and they're just not sure how to. And if you've achieved that, and it may have taken a lot of hard work, if you've achieved that in a series of steps, you can share your own struggle. So these are some ways you can build trust. And as you know, when you build trust, you get that connection, you get into that permission to sell. When people hear my story at the front of my workshops and I'm helping them become more comfortable public speakers, as people hear my story, straight away they feel, wow, if Peter can do this, then I must be able to do that as well. So that's the advantage of sharing your struggle, revealing some vulnerability. Make sure you do walk the talk and have some credentials, have some experience. Preparation is another way of building rapport and connection. Your preparation is so key. I love the iceberg model. The iceberg model is used for lots of things. And this is what is above the water. This is what you see when I do a workshop. This is the area that you see. My body language, you hear my content, you see the way I use the platform, the way I engage you. This is what you don't see, and this is all below the water. This is about 80% of your presentation. So this is the tip of the iceberg, and this is me getting ready, arriving early, doing a pre-workshop questionnaire, Googling people, looking at your values, your missions. It is the preparation that helps you build rapport. It's the preparation that helps you connect with the audience. The more preparation you do, the easier it is for you to build rapport and connect. Let me explain just a little bit further around preparation. What do I mean? Know your audience. Walk 30 moons in your enemy's moccasins. That's a native North American saying. You need to walk 30 moons in your enemy's moccasins before you understand them. Cultural awareness. Are there any cultural nuances you need to be aware of? When I was in Bendigo, I always acknowledged the Dja Dja Rung people. And when I'm in Mildura, it's the Latchi Latchi people. Or when I go to Swan Hill, it's the Wamba Wamba people. Shepparton, the Yorta Yorta people. Here in Perth, it's the Wadjuk people, which is part of the Noongar nation. Are there any other cultural awarenesses you need to be of? When someone hands you a card with two hands, do you reach out and grab it with one hand, or do you politely also receive it with two hands? This is our Southeast Asian neighbours, the Singaporeans, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Malaysians. They do that double-handed exchange of business cards. Your credit card, when you go to a shop, a supermarket, or you check into your Southeast Asian hotel, they will give your credit card back. Receive it like that. Please be culturally aware if you want to connect and build that rapport. After I acknowledge the traditional landowners, often someone who I would not pick as Indigenous comes up and says, I really appreciate you acknowledging the traditional landowners. What's the audience expectations? This is the preparation. Biggest issue in presentations is when the audience comes expecting this and the speaker delivers this. And there's that mismatch between audience expectations and what is delivered. This will break down your connection with the audience straight away. The trust will disappear. Are your values and your beliefs consistent with the people in the room? I worked with a grain handling company last week. And so they work with wheats, oats, barley and other pulses. And I come from a farming background, so I can talk about and demonstrate my values and beliefs of the farmer and how they often get underpaid for their produce. I worked with an aged care facility last week, and I was able to demonstrate the values and beliefs of aged care. I had to move my mother from her own home into a nursing home, and that was really tough. And it was the staff that really made that journey enjoyable and positive for my mother. Values and beliefs. And use the right language and the right jargon. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But when I'm working with mining sector, Chevron, BHP Rio, the language I use is different to those in the health and the disability sector. How do you know what language to use? How do you know what values and beliefs to espouse? Please don't make your values and beliefs up. Your values and beliefs appear in your LinkedIn profile, in the blogs that you share on your blog posts, on your website. You can't just make up values and beliefs. That's your preparation. It is the majority of your presentation, knowing your audience before you get before them. That'll really assist you in building rapport. Can anyone add anything else in your preparation that will enable you to build rapport and connect? What would you do to build rapport? Yep. So Steve, send out a resource, a free resource before the presentation. So 10 tips to help you control your nerves of public speaking. If I send that out beforehand, now people come to my workshops, they're going to really value those little tips. Maybe a video, you can send out a video. I mentioned a TED Talk with Brene Brown and her book. I could send you the link to Brene Brown's talk on vulnerability before I speak to you. And if you've watched that, that'll just help you understand where I'm coming from. Thanks for that, Steve. Good tip. Language that your audience understands. So it's about speaking their jargon. I mentioned when I'm working in the mining sector, it's different language to the disability sector, different language to the finance and the superannuation sector. Speak their jargon. Use the right language. I mentioned the grain handling company I spoke to last week, and they sent me a lot of workshop, and a lot of them work in the FX trade, so the FX. And of course, if you work in trading, and I guess you're selling wheat or you're on the stock exchange, FX stands for foreign exchange. Welcome those people who are just joining. We have got underway, but you can still, I am recording this webinar, so you will be able to watch the recording if you want. So they used FX, foreign exchange. I'm a health professional, 30 years in hospitals. FX stands for fracture of a bone, a broken tibia, broken fibia, broken humerus, FX, fracture. Be careful of jargon. Use the right language for your audience. This is part of your preparation. If you want to connect, it's about speaking the same language, showing the same values, being empathic to their work, their needs, their problems. That's how you build rapport. That's how you connect. One of the things I talk about is what headache are you the paracetamol for? What headache are you the paracetamol for? And if you solve people's headaches, they're going to love you. They're going to love you. So the right language, the right jargon is about their problems, about their issues, about their aspirations and goals, and you give them some information that helps them, then that's going to connect you and build rapport. I was reading a blog this morning, and it's about, in your content, in your communications, don't make it about you, make it about the audience, the readers, their problems. Pay them a cultural compliment. I mentioned the business card exchange, acknowledging the traditional landowners. Talk football. I was in Melbourne a few years ago at the Comedy Festival, greatest place in Australia to watch comedy. The Comedy Festival, there was an Englishman there. I remember his name, Mark Watson. Mark Watson, around about March, the Comedy Festival, spends about 5 minutes at the start of his 90-minute comedy routine, spends about 5-10 minutes talking AFL football, Australian rules football. This is an Englishman, and he spoke about it so knowledgeably about some of the scandals that were hitting the AFL at the time, who was likely to win. He checked who in the room supported Collingwood, and he knew the divide, like you're either with Collingwood or you're against them, and he had the audience in the palm of his hand before he'd even started his routine. He paid that Melbourne audience, that Australian audience, a great cultural compliment. AFL was not his thing, not his natural talk. He had to take the time to learn, prepare and speak AFL so that he could roll it out seamlessly at his comedy gig. What cultural compliment can you pay your audience? How might you, I'm going to pause for a moment, how might you pay a cultural compliment? Thanks, Sarah. Yes, dress is really important. You dress at the right level. The rule for dress is don't be overdressed, don't be underdressed. In my workshops, most times I don't wear a tie, but I check first. If I go on stage with a tie and a waistcoat and a penguin suit and I'm just speaking to some health professionals, I'm going to look really bizarre. It's okay with lawyers and certified practicing accountants. They do expect a tie. If I go on stage with football shorts and a football jumper, then I'm going to be underdressed. So I won't build rapport. That won't be a cultural compliment. All right. Some other simple tools that are going to help you. Use conversational style. Don't talk to them. Don't lecture to them. Don't give them the way forward. Instead, have a chat. Can you see how this might help you? What's the way forward? What's the best way that you can make a difference to your audiences? A really good speaker leaves the room. Sorry, if you're really successful, everybody leaves the room with the impression that you've just had a conversation with them. So you've got 100 people in the room, all 100 people leave feeling, oh, Peter's just had a conversation with me. And of course, our Aboriginal people call it having a yarn. So when you do your next presentation, the yarn or the conversation, rather than the lecture, rather than the telling people what to do, is better in building rapport. Use your stories. In my introduction, I spoke about stories of vulnerability, stories of success, but stories that they can relate to. The mining stories and the health stories, they're different. When I work with superannuation, financial planners, I tell the story of my father when he passed away without a will. It's called intestate, and the struggle that caused me. So straight away I've built rapport and connected with these financial planners who one of the first things they'll say is, do you have a will? By the very fact, the very story that I had shared with them with my father. Assume that the audience knows more than you. Give them 3+ in knowledge and assume you've only got 1+. Let's face it, the collective wisdom of the people in the room is going to be greater than yours. and come from that humble perspective. And there's no silly questions. Respect what the audience has to say. Inclusive language, together we, how are you, as opposed to I want you to do this and I did this and I remember when I was a hero and when I succeeded. It's about you. You too can do this. You can make a difference to your client's life. And inclusive gestures and body language, the close gesture, the non-inclusive expression as opposed to the palms up, which is come on a journey with me. So what's your body saying about you? Are you using inclusive gestures? All of this is helping you build rapport. All of this is helping you connect with the audience. Just going to pause for a moment. Are there any questions? How many of you know what your body language says about you? This is about connection and rapport. There are some body languages that will interfere with your credibility. Different topic, different webinar. What is credible body language versus non-credible? And of course, the passive body language can really reduce your credibility. And the common one we know is the fig leaf, where people stand up with their hands dropped and folded over their crotch area. That's the fig leaf. That is passive. That is, I don't want to be here. No good for credibility. Also not good for rapport. Be authentic and genuine. If you want to connect and you want to be in rapport, be authentic. Who you are off the stage is the same person you are on the stage. Don't do a performance, please. I share a story in my workshops of a friend of mine flying to Melbourne from Perth to speak at a conference around innovation, and he's a futurist. And what he said was the person next to him, he was flying up the front of the plane, he often does that, and the person next to him started talking, and he was a very interesting guy, so they struck up a good conversation. About an hour into the flight, the passenger said, so why are you going to Melbourne? He said, I'm speaking at a conference on innovation tomorrow morning. I'm the keynote speaker. And the passenger said, oh, I'm going to be attending that conference as well. So just stop and digest that for a moment. This audience member in tomorrow's keynote's been chatting to you for an hour on the aeroplane. Now, if you go onto the conference venue and stand up and you become a fake, you become a punce, you put a plum in your mouth and do a performance, the audience member is going to say, hang on, that's not the person I spent 3.5 hours on the aeroplane from Perth to Melbourne with. Who is this person? You're not authentic. I don't trust him because I thought he was very genuine and he was so nice and approachable on the plane, and now on stage I'm seeing this performance. Find your genuine, authentic self. No one else. That's the only person to take to the stage. Need to move on quickly. The right attitude, conviction. Do you believe in your message? I have communicate with care. The right attitude, you want to be there. Responsibility, I'm here to change people's lives. I'm here to help you move forward. Public speaking is transformational. Right energy level, please don't come on too high, jumping up and down like an evangelical speaker. If the audience's energy is there, please don't come in too low. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today, and we're going to have a fantastic time. Please don't do that. Your energy level needs to match the energy level of the audience. Match it. That's communicate with care. Keep the connection going. Deliver what you promised. Send them that free resources that you said you were going to let them know. Remain behind after the presentation has finished. Speak to them. Answer further questions. I'm available to you after the webinar. Send me emails. I will answer any questions. Follow up as you promised. Ask for honest feedback. I'd love your feedback around this webinar. Those of you who've done my workshops know that I send a feedback questionnaire after every presentation. I allow people to let them know what they think. Sometimes you give out free stuff, ebooks, thumb drives with some extra resources, a copy of my PowerPoint slides. Guys, if you want a copy of this webinar, let me know and I'll send you the recording free of charge. Don't do rapport destroyers. Don't be the guru. Don't have a mismatch of your language or your message. Don't overuse acronyms. I mentioned FX, foreign exchange. FX, fracture of a bone. Don't tell bad jokes. Leave your ego off the side, off the stage. Come on, be humble, be genuine, be authentic. Don't destroy that rapport by doing something silly on stage. So that's how you build rapport. That's how you connect. Why? It's important. It builds trust. A lot of it's to do with your preparation. How are you going to prepare? Right language, the right jargon, cultural complement. The tools to build rapport. Using the stories, being genuine, revealing your vulnerability. Why not keep that rapport going, that relationship going after your presentation? And don't do any rapport busters. Are there any last questions as we come to the end of the webinar? Please type those questions in. June, 2 webinars, 6 habits of highly successful speakers. I've studied successful speakers for a long time. I watch YouTube videos, I watch TED Talks, and I go to presentations and seminars and conferences purely to watch great speakers. Daniel Goldman is speaking in Perth next week. Emotional intelligence, the father of emotional intelligence. My wife will be going and collecting tips on what he did really well. Later on in June, a checklist. So this is kind of a resource that you can have after the webinar to ensure your presentations are successful. If you do all of these things, have it all covered, you'll do a great webinar. These are on in June 6th and 15th. Workshops coming up. Perth, Melbourne, Bunbury, going to Broome for the first time. Go to my website and you will see all of these things. If you feel that you would like a workshop in-house, your organisation, I'm quite happy to travel. Both my wife and I travel Australia-wide. You know how to reach me, my website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Stories Out Loud. Any last questions?